640. Yeah, because I've got reflections. I would take the glasses off if you were telling me.
Yeah, no problem.
I know I have the glasses on too. I probably would keep them on. Otherwise, I can't see what I'm talking about. But no.
Hey, what I may do, if you don't care, Rick, I may just, and I hadn't done this before, I may snap a couple of pictures of the screen just during the thing, just to throw on social media afterwards. If you don't,
that's fine.
care.
If you're going to do it, let me know. I'll just do this. And
okay, we'll just be like, hey, what? This is live podcast, not live, but this is what happens during the podcast or something.
Yep.
Just cool.
There you go. All right. Well, coming down in 3, 2, and 1. Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Brewery Underground Podcast. Hey, I'm Steve Sullivan, and I am joined, of course, as always, by the man himself, Scott Touron. How are you, sir?
Great, man. What's up, buddy? How are you?
I am doing pretty well. Of course, we're coming, of course, from Nashville, Tennessee, and I got to tell you, it's starting to feel like fall around town.
It's awesome. It's
I
awesome.
was out the other day, and I'm like, okay, the 100-degree temperatures are starting to escape us a little bit. So
a little bit, yeah, we'll take it. It is definitely, well, I don't know if it's going to stay fall, but it's fall, and it is great beer drinking weather, isn't it?
It is.
And kind of Oktoberfest season, too. So
it is an Oktoberfest season, and we are definitely going to get to that in just one moment. But before we get to that, we want to bring in our guest today. He is the founder of Pints for Prostates, and it is a grassroots campaign that's designed to raise awareness about prostate cancer and the importance of early detection and fighting the disease. And, we do a lot of lighthearted subjects on the Brewery Underground podcast. This one today takes on a big meaning and a lot of importance. And Rick, we're very glad that you could join us today to talk about this initiative.
Well, hey, Steve. Hey, Scott. Thanks for having me. We're thrilled to be here.
Cheers and welcome. Obviously, Prost, right? Because it's Oktoberfest. So welcome and thanks for being here.
It is Oktoberfest season, and I know you got yourself a drink right before we were going to go on, and we always want to start one with a toast of something. Yep. And on this podcast, I am drinking the Wunderlinger. It would be the Oktoberfest, and they're out of Chattanooga. I have not had this beer yet, so look forward to having it during this podcast. Rick, what are you drinking tonight?
I'm drinking a Nota Monstro from 2 years ago, so it's 2022, and it's drinking really nicely.
It's aged well.
Yeah. What's the ABV on that, Rick? Do you know?
Monstro is around 11, I think.
Nice. If you taper off at the end of the podcast, we'll understand why.
Yes. Yeah. Nice light beer for the podcast.
Good warm up. Yeah. Well, good. I've got. It's called, I found this in Kentucky the other day, Steve, at a party source. It's called Slaposaurus.
Okay.
And it's from Three Floyds out of Indiana. It's actually, let me say, it's a really cool can. And it's 9.9, so it's not a snoozer either. And I've got it in my Vivacious pint glass that I got brand new too, Steve. There's one of these for you downstairs too.
Oh, love it.
Anyway, yeah, shout out to our buddy Keith in Cleveland.
Shout out to him. Absolutely. That is a great, fantastic beer. Well, as we said, we're in Nashville. Rick, now where are you hailing from tonight during this episode?
I'm in North Carolina. I'm just north of Charlotte.
Okay. All right. Well, great. Well, we're definitely happy to have you. And we want to talk about this initiative, Pints for Prostates. And basically, you started this in 2008. And the story basically behind this is the reason you started it is because it directly impacted you, right?
Yeah, Steve. I was diagnosed with prostate cancer in 2008, really by happenstance, and that started my prostate cancer journey. Thankfully, I was detected early. I had surgery, and excuse me. Sorry, guys. I was detected early, had surgery, and oh, you know what? Sorry, guys. I thought I had shut my work thing off. It's going to be dinging. Let me just shut it off. Can we just go back to the top of that question?
No problem.
Go ahead.
Okay.
You want me to ask it again?
Yeah. No, I've got the question. I'm just getting just getting distracted, and that's not good. I've shut that off now. Okay. Well, I was diagnosed with prostate cancer, and thankfully it was detected early, and it was really by happenstance. A friend of mine at work had advanced stage prostate cancer and was pushing a bunch of us to get screened. I was 47 at the time. Really didn't think I needed to worry about it at 47 years old, but I got screened and found out I had an issue. So thankfully, it was early stage. I was able to have surgery and have recovered from that. And, here it is 2024. I've fully recovered.
Walk us through.
So let me ask real quick, though. You
go
didn't
ahead.
have any symptoms either, right?
No, absolutely no symptoms. And that's the thing that one of the key reasons we started Pints for Prostates. And that is if you're a man and you're not getting screened on a regular basis, and you're just waiting around saying, hey, I hear this is a slow moving cancer, and most people survive it. By the time you develop symptoms, the prostate cancer is already advanced. It's already left the prostate gland and it's spread to other parts of your body. And that's where you have issues, and that's where the problems come in. So we're all about going out, promoting men to be aware, to get screened, starting at 40 years old, and then to deal with it. They've got to take charge of their health, and that's what we're all about. So at several of our events around the country each year, we do screening events. So we've screened thousands of guys over the years as part of that effort.
Rick, walk us through from the time that your diagnosis to wanting to go through and start the initiative where you were partnering with these festivals to do screenings. Can you talk about the timeline of how that all came about for you?
Yeah, it's kind of interesting. I was diagnosed originally. I knew I had a problem at the tail end of 2007. Had my surgery early in 2008, and quite honestly, I was thinking about what can I do to sort of pay it forward and thank my friend who had who tipped me off. And I came back from surgery. I was back home about a week, and my wife said to me, hey, were you serious about that Pints for Prostates thing? And I kind of looked at her, and I did not know what she was talking about. Had no recollection of even that name. And she said, oh, before your surgery, after they'd given you some medication to start to sedate you, you started talking about this idea you had, and you wanted to do a fundraiser around beer called Pints for Prostates. I'm one of those people who believe that if you say something when you're drunk, you have to do it. When you're sober. So, this is kind of the ultimate thing. It teaches you the lesson. You won't say stupid things again. So the idea was to hold a single event. We're going to raise some money. We're going to send a check off to a charity that does some work with guys with prostate cancer. We did the one event. We raised a little bit under $2,000. I felt really good. We sent the check off, and then I started to get some calls from folks that I knew in the beer industry, because I'd been writing about beer since the mid 1980s, early 1980s, and a few of them had heard that I had gone through surgery, heard that I had done this fundraising thing, and asked if they could write a check, if they could hold an event. Lo and behold, now, 16 years later, we're still doing events, and we went out and set up a 501c3. So that journey of conceiving the idea and then launching the events, it was a couple years later that we decided to form a partnership with a group called the Prostate Conditions Education Council that's out in Colorado. They have a relationship with a lab, and they do screenings at various events. So we found them, we connected, and we've been working with them ever since on screenings at a number of our events.
Were you the first that you know of that had started this type of event at, like beer festivals across the country? Was there anything like this going on?
I don't know of anything in the prostate cancer realm, but the reality is that breweries are um, very, very civic minded. They donate a lot. They, if you any brew pub, any craft brewer that you look at, there are pint nights in their places. There's fundraisers. There's other things always going on there. So breweries have always been extremely generous, and so that's where our involvement with them started, and on the craft beer side. And we started to do, go to a few festivals and do some things around the Southeast. We gradually spread out from there, and we've done events now from basically Boston to Seattle and St. Paul down to San Antonio.
That's fantastic. And who's been helping you along the way? Has it been a couple of people? Has it really grown as you've grown over the last few years?
Well, we have sort of this army of volunteers. We have one paid employee that helps us with communications and keeping things moving, but the rest is a team of volunteers that really come together around events. And then we have folks who at the breweries and things that come back to us each year. We also have some friends at a couple of the a couple of retailers and things. Flying Saucer has been the Flying Saucer Draft Emporium has been a partner of ours for almost they were actually the location we did our first event at. So
Okay.
they go back to the very, very start of Pints for Prostates.
Yeah, I remember that was one of my favorite hangouts when they used to be here in Nashville. And the Flying Saucer.
Closed.
I was just in their location in downtown Houston yesterday, so it's they're around, and it's a great spot.
So before we started recording, we were talking, and the timing of this thing has worked out. You being on here has worked out pretty well. You've been on our list for a while, and we just reached out, I don't know, 2 weeks ago. And why I say that is September is National Prostate Awareness Month, right? So we're in September, so that worked out. And then let's talk about your biggest fundraising event that's coming up, called the Denver Rare Beer Tasting. What is that? October 10th.
October 10th. It's it's on the Thursday of Great American Beer Festival weekend in Denver. This will be the 15th edition of it. The first one was in 2009. We've had we had COVID there in the middle, so it hasn't happened every year, but we're back, and we've been back for, I think this is the third year that we've been back. And this is an event. This is an afternoon of beer passion. We have an incredible group of breweries coming together this year. It'll be 52 what I think of as sort of all-star craft brewers. You mentioned some of the names of these breweries, and people light up that these folks are coming together in Denver. And it's not just that they're sending beer to us, and they're sending some pretty incredible stuff. But one of the things that we started doing from the very first year of the Denver Beer Tasting is we required any brewery pouring at the event to have a brewer or one of their chief executives at the event. So you'll walk through our event, and you'll have Jim Cook there from Boston, Sam Adams Brewery, Sam Calgione from Dogfish, Tommy Arthur from the Lost Abbey. The list just keeps going on of the people who are there and pouring beer, and so the beer fans who show up, and and support the event. The thing you hear most often as you're walking through, you hear people just saying, "You won't believe who just poured me this beer. You won't believe who just poured me this beer." So it's pretty cool.
Great.
I've seen pictures on your website, and it is all those people and more. You're like, I recognize that person. I recognize that person. Like similar, like Norm from Cheers. Like, what's his name? George Wendt. He's in one of those.
Yeah,
things.
George Wendt
Yeah.
from Cheers actually was there our first year, and it's kind of funny. I got a phone call just minutes before the event from somebody with the Brewers Association. George was in town doing something at GABF because he had a book coming out, and they said, he's looking for something to do, and he's wondering if he can come over to your event. And I was like, yeah, I think we can squeeze him in.
That's great. Two things. I'm going to be at GABF this year. I'm actually getting in there on the 9th, which I think is the Wednesday. You guys. So does it always coincide, or the last few years coincided with GABF?
Yeah, from the very start,
Okay.
We've always had it during GABF weekend. Traditionally, it's been on Friday. This year, it's on Thursday. We've changed venues this year, and so we also moved to the Thursday date.
With that, and I think you have limited number of tickets, right? You sell, but with GABF going on around it, I think it's got to be a big draw for you. I mean, there's so many people that come to town for GABF anyway.
Yeah, it's and that's the reason why we decided to do this in Denver. It started out with a conversation with some folks at All About Beer magazine. You got to think back, 15 years ago, 16 years ago, that the idea of rare beer. There were just a few places that were starting to do barrel aged beer, and there were very few vintage beers, and this idea of holding a rare beer tasting, we weren't exactly sure, what would happen, and we put the tickets on sale. We decided to do it in Denver specifically because we wanted brewers to be there. We didn't want this to be another one of those festivals where volunteers are serving the beer, and the beer fans who are there, if they have questions, the volunteers, they've got a little card, they can tell you what's on the card, and that's it. This event is designed so you can rub elbows with those brewers, you can ask questions about that beer, and just talk beer in general with them. So we started under that concept, and when we put the tickets on sale the first year, we didn't know what to expect, and the thing was sold out in about a week.
That's amazing.
Great.
Talk about some of, and I probably wouldn't recognize a lot of the names of the beers, but there's one that stands out, and it's popped up on the website a couple of times. So the Sam Adams Utopias, like they always have that at GABF. It looks like they've got it at the rare beer tasting as well. That's a big deal. I know the line for that thing, and they only serve it. I know at GABF they serve it like, I don't know, 2 times a day or something at a particular time, and the line just backs up, and it's pretty great. Talk about that. Have you had that beer? And then some of the other beers that they have there, do they kind of rival that? Are they that kind of rarity?
Yeah. We've been blessed over the years. Sam Adams, they have been at every one of our events. So they're one of 4 breweries that have poured every year, and I would say that probably 12 out of those 15 years, they've brought some type of Utopias to the event. And the interesting thing, they're always doing a little bit of a twist for the product that they bring to pour at ours. They'll have some really special vintage, or this year the product, the Utopias that they're pouring has been aged on cherries, and it's a beer that's 29% alcohol, so it's got some heft to it.
A little bit, yeah.
And the thing is that the way we set up our event, and the number of breweries are there, we limit our tickets So typically at any one brewery, the lines are not very long at the Denver beer tasting. They at most you might have a line that's 7 or 8 people long, to get a particular beer, because the reality is Utopias is great, and at any other festival, you're right, they would be they'd be lined up really deep for that product. But you look to your left and look to your right if you're standing there and there's a line at any one of the breweries, and the liquid that's right next door is incredible also. So why am I standing in line here? I'll go to this booth next door, I'll have that beer, this line will go down, I'll come back for that one.
Yeah.
So it's just we have an embarrassment of riches as far as the beers that are being poured and the people that are there. So we're really lucky.
It's a very specialized thing, as you said, and it's not. I've been to a rare beer fest. Rhine Guys had one. They haven't had it in a couple of years. In Cincinnati, I've been to a couple of those, and we had one here called Winter Warmer, and apparently they're not going to have it again this year. But same kind of thing, just very rare, kind of barrel aged stuff, high ABV. But it was the event was for very specific. I won't say specific people, but people that love that style of beer, those styles of beers. It's not for everyone.
Yeah, I mean, this is a little bit of a different festival because the idea is we don't call ourselves a festival. Actually, it's the Denver Beer Tasting for a reason. We wanted to signify that you're there to enjoy the beer. We provide a lunch during the event, and there's areas to sit down and enjoy the beer and talk to your friends, talk to the brewers. But the whole idea here is to experience some rarities that you won't have a chance to try again in a lot of cases. We have some beers that are being poured this year. It's always the case where a brewer has saved something special for us, and it's the last keg in existence, and it's a beer that they're not going to brew again. So here it is. And I mean, even I'll pick on the Sam Adams again here. The Utopias. It's a 2021 vintage Utopias that's on Balaton cherries, and this one was finished and blended with some Utopias that was in Sauterne French oak barrels. So there's it's a little bit of a twist on that, but at the very same table, Sam Adams is pouring a second beer, which is really unique. It's a beer called Barrel Aged Vixen. It's a beer that they only brew for special occasions, and this one was brewed for their 40th anniversary celebration. So it's a blend of some of their Bock beers, and it's really special in its own right. It would, if they only brought that one, that would be a really special beer. Yeah. So that's the kind of thing that goes on at this event.
Wait, stick to the Utopias for a minute. I know that thing because every time it comes out, there's a story about it. It's banned in so many states, right? And Steve and I have a kind of a funny story about it. Remember, Steve, you brought a bottle of it to a little barbecue we were having, and we opened it up, and Steve was going to share it with everyone, and we opened it up and we drank it. And I go, nobody else is going to like this. Nobody else is going to drink this.
I was at a store in Cincinnati where I'm from called Jungle Gyms, and I walked in there and I looked up and I went, "Am I seeing what I'm seeing?" And I've been in this place many times and I've never seen any Utopias, and I was like, I have got to get this right now and take a picture, sending to Scott, and it's the only time that I've actually seen a bottle of a Utopia on any stores, like that.
Yeah, if you spot this beer in the wild, I think it retails for $250 a bottle or so typically. Yep. You need to buy it right away because it's not going to be there. I've seen it on the resale market where people try to, buy up what they can and double their money, which I don't like that kind of thing. I think a beer like that, is special and ought to be shared and shared with friends like you were trying to do at the barbecue. But it is, it's a beer that if somebody is expecting, that it's going to taste like a Budweiser, they're going to be shocked when they, when they taste that. But that's the thing with this event. There's a lot of beers that have special qualities to them. They're aged in special bourbon barrels. They're mixed things where they're on different types of wood. They might have cocoa nibs added or vanilla beans. You've got brewers that are really operating at a high level of the brewing art to bring some things through in the beer and try some special things. And the range of ABVs at our event, we've got some beers that are in the 4 and 5% category. We've got a number of them that are in the 8 to 10 to 12. Then we've got some some heavyweights that they're above that are 15%, 16%. I think after Utopias, River North has their 12th anniversary beer at the event, and so that beer, it's Anniversary 12 Stout, and it is a barrel-aged beer that was only sold during your 12th anniversary celebration this year. Comes in at 22.1% ABV. So it's not often that you're somewhere in the 22.1% ABV is not the strongest beer available. But I'm looking forward to that one. But there's just some neat some neat things going on with different folks there and what they're doing, and it's not all high test situations. There's a brewery from Auburn, New York, called Prison City Pub and Brewery. They're bringing along a beer that's been really popular at our event in previous years. Prison City hasn't been every year. They've actually not been there the last couple of years, so they're returning this year. They're bringing Wham Whams back, which is also an imperial stout that's blended with some toasted coconut and vanilla. So it's really good bourbon barrel. But they also have a beer that they're going to pour called Solar Winds, which is actually a photo aged lager, and so that's going to be a nice sort of combination of lagers which you would normally associate with German brewers, and they're using kind of a Belgian style to age the beer and bring it forward. So I'm looking forward to trying that.
Man, it sounds delicious. All of those things sound delicious. Well, go ahead, Steve.
No, I was gonna say, kind of just returning a little bit to your initiative, Pints for Prostates. I'm really curious because it sounds like what you said when you started this, around 2008, it really took off. And now you're doing, I guess, like over 100 events across the country at this point, beer festivals. Did you envision in your head that it would get this big at this point?
No, not at all. I mean, we're approaching having raised $3 million over the years, and we've plowed that back into awareness programs and the screenings because it's so important to get out there and encourage guys. The interesting thing is going to work these events. We like to set up amongst the brewers. We don't like to be off on our own. If we're screening, we usually have the screening actually on the outside of the event as people are coming in, and they'll get screened, as they're coming in. But then, in this festival itself, we'll be amongst the breweries, and so guys will be coming down the aisles, and they sort of mechanically stick their glass out to get a beer.
Yeah.
They get up to our table, they stick the glass out, they see the sign, the glass comes back, they'll give you a little bit of a strange look sometimes, and they say, what's going on? And that's when we can engage, in conversation with them. We talk about, we ask them what they know about prostate cancer, and we've got some literature and some information that that we'll provide them with. We'll encourage them to get screened, and it's rewarding from the standpoint that we know we've reached some men that needed to know that information, and we got to them at the right time. So that's what's important, and we try to encourage guys. It's funny too. When we first started doing this, the reaction was more like I just described. Now that we've been out there a little bit, the awareness level among beer fans is pretty good. It's gotten a lot better. So we don't get sort of a strange look anymore. Sometimes we get people coming over who want, who say, "Oh, I heard about you guys," and they want to know more. So that's a good thing. But guys really need to. I used to say we're about 30 years behind women in taking control of our own health. The pink ribbon that we have seen on everything, from cat food to tires. The pink ribbon campaign has been out there and doing a really effective job of raising awareness for breast cancer. And so they are much more advanced in how they handle that and how they approach it, and the screening programs that are out there for women. We're trying to do the same within the beer industry.
There on your website, pintsforprostates.org, there is a section on there. It's called "What You Need to Know," and just for the sake of this podcast, so people need to know, we're not gonna go ahead and read everything that's on there. We'll invite people to go on there, but a couple of things that stood out for me here is that 1 in 8 men are going to be diagnosed with prostate cancer in their lifetimes, and 29% 5-year survival rate when prostate cancer is detected at advanced stages. When you're doing a lot of talking to individuals at these beer festivals, do you think a lot of guys know this? Do you think they realize it? And
No,
what do you?
they don't. They don't know that it's actually prostate cancer in men is more prevalent than breast cancer in women, and most men aren't aware of that because the awareness of breast cancer is many folds greater than prostate cancer. The thing is that if detected early, prostate cancer is nearly 100% survivable. Some groups say that it's 100% survivable if you detect it early, and so if you detect it later, then it drops to that 29% level for the 5-year survivability. So time is on your side if you detect it early. The problem right now is that the number of prostate cancer cases is going up. It's this year it'll be nearly 300,000, and the number of deaths has been going up steady the last 3 or 4 years because a few years ago there was a lot of information being spread, and unfortunately it discouraged men from getting screened. There was a lot of discussions around whether the treatment was necessary in some cases. And because prostate cancer, there's different forms of it. There was a sense that, hey, maybe we're being a little bit too aggressive with the treatment of prostate cancer. The reality is because that caused the number of men who are getting screened regularly to go down. When now the upswing in deaths are happening because guys are presenting themselves with the disease later, and it's harder to treat at that point. So hopefully that message is no longer out there questioning the value of screening, and hopefully guys are getting word on that and getting screened. It's a simple process, by the way. I should point out that the screening for prostate cancer, everybody fears the digital rectal exam, and they don't want to go through that. The reality is the initial screener for prostate cancer is a simple blood test. It's called the PSA, which is the prostate specific antigen test. And that blood test, when we administer it at our events, we're also doing a panel where you get back your PSA number. You also get a glucose number for diabetes. You get a cholesterol number for heart disease, and you get a testosterone level, because that's also a marker for some common, male illnesses. So you get those four numbers, and you're able to see, a lot about where you are on some really, really important issues for men's health.
I feel like it's timely for me because I just had my annual physical about 2 weeks ago and I had all that done. So, and thankfully I check out and everything is good on my end. I
That's
am
great.
curious. Yeah, I am curious. You've obviously been embraced by the beer community because you're doing, the festivals. What about the medical community? How have you been able to partner with them throughout the country in this initiative?
Yeah, we've had some good partnerships with medical organizations around the country. It's kind of interesting that, in some cases the question of, I don't know if we can be involved with beer comes up, but then on
Yeah.
the other hand, we're not encouraging overconsumption, and we're really using it as a tool, because in that environment, we're looking for a place. If you think about a pub, if you think about guys getting together and talking, this is a place where it's a little bit of a safe zone. It's a free zone to, hey Scott, how are you doing? Hey Steve, how you doing? You've been a doctor. What's going? You'd have that conversation, and that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to start a simple conversation over a beer, to just say, hey, are you doing okay? Have you been screened? You really need to get screened, and that's an important conversation that unfortunately for a lot of guys, we all know the guys they're bulletproof.
Yeah.
They don't need to see it. They don't need to see a doctor unless a limb is sort of hanging off their body by a thread, and we need to be smarter than that.
Yeah.
So if I'm not where you guys are and I'm scared or I don't have a doctor or I don't have insurance, is there a recommendation or some advice you would give someone? If I walk in and you guys are there, okay, I'm probably apt to do it, right? But if someone's listening to this thing right now and be like, man, I think I should do that. I don't know how. I don't have insurance. I don't have a doctor. Is there something you could say to someone? Say, hey, do this.
Well, there's a couple of things, and that's one of the reasons why we started to do the free screenings, because it's not just guys who don't have insurance. There's a lot of men out there now, and I should say this: we provide screenings for anybody who was born with a prostate. So, so if you're a non-binary person who was assigned male at birth, or you've gone through and some gender transition. If you were born male, you have a prostate, you need to be screened. So in the case of you, if you can't get to one of our events, and one of the reasons why we always screen outside the festivals is that our screenings are open to everybody, whether they have a ticket to the festival or not. So when we're in
That's great.
Denver on October 10th, if you're in Denver, you can come down and get screened, even if you don't have a ticket for the Denver Rare Beer tasting.
Oh, no way. That's
So
fantastic. Okay.
yeah, that's
Yeah.
number one. Number two, especially during September around the country, a number of healthcare organizations do offer the free PSA blood test screening. They'll have, because of Prostate Cancer Awareness Month, they have those screenings available. So you can check with your local hospital. You can use your search engine of choice to look for free screenings. And it's important to make that happen.
That's excellent. And you touched on this a little bit. What are the guidelines? I guess let me ask you this: when someone walks up to you guys, is there a criteria or a guideline? Do you have to ask them their age or anything like that for what the guideline for getting tested is or screened is?
Yeah, so that's one of those areas where it may depend on who you talk to or which organization you listen to as far as when you should start getting screened. So in some things depend on family history. Some organizations will say you should wait until you're 50 to be screened. If I had waited until I was 50, I probably wouldn't be on this podcast with you. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So our guideline, what we suggest is that you get at least a baseline screening at 40 years old, so that you have a number, and that number can come in handy later if you get screened and your PSA level is elevated. You then have a baseline for it. So initial screening at 40, unless you're in a high risk group, and two of those groups are African Americans. They should be getting screened at 35 years old. They have a higher rate of prostate cancer. Or if you have a relative a close relative who has had prostate cancer, if that's a father, a brother, an uncle, that's important to get screened. Then also starting at 35, your risk levels go way up if you have a relative who's had the disease.
You've been at this obviously for a long time now. I would have to think at some of these festivals or in other forms of communication, you've had people that have reached out to you and said, I did this, I got this done, and you helped me out quite a bit. Can you talk about that a little bit more?
Yeah, I've heard from a few people, who've been through the process. The one thing to realize about this, Steve, is that it's a very personal
Yep.
type of cancer, and so a lot of folks will go off and have this surgery, and they won't tell their best friend that
Mm-hmm.
that they had the surgery. They'll tell their best friend that they had back surgery, or or something else, right? And that's part of the stigma that's there around prostate cancer that really shouldn't be there, particularly now with with the robotic surgery techniques and other things that are there. The doctors have gotten so good if you detect this disease in its early stages of doing nerve sparing surgery, where your recovery period is so quick. And for a lot of guys, for most men at that stage, the cases of incontinence or erectile dysfunction, but you've never thought you'd have that on your podcast, is is quite low, the instances of it. So so that's important. Most people think that that's what this disease results in, and it doesn't have to if you're getting screened and detected early enough.
But it has to, as somebody that's gone through this before, and to hear from those folks that are willing to reach out to you and have told you, knowing what you've gone through, that has to be a lot more, even more satisfaction that you started this initiative in the first place.
Well, yeah, I mean, there's a lot of pride in it, from that standpoint. But we have so many people helping us, the volunteers and things,
Yeah.
and the breweries, and it's satisfaction not just for me. There's a
Right.
lot of people here who are involved, and I do it for Michael Cunningham, who was my friend who pushed me to get screened. He ultimately passed away from prostate cancer because he didn't have the benefit of a Michael pushing him to get screened. So he didn't detect the disease until it was in its advanced stages. So what I do for Michael, and I do for other guys who are struggling. We have approximately it's 3.3 to 3.4 million men in America at this moment who've been through prostate cancer treatment successfully or are going through it now. And so it's more prevalent than most people recognize. You probably know people who've been through it who you don't even realize, because they're leading solid, productive lives that were just interrupted by by cancer, for a period of time, and they got it treated successfully.
Right.
You mentioned volunteers and how important they are to you for your events and things. Has it been easier, or is it to find volunteers for the events as you've grown, or has it always been from day one been able to fill that need for enough volunteers for these events?
Yeah, volunteers are amazing people that have come forward, to us to help us, and people come in and volunteer for a while. They may come and do one event. They may work with us for several years. We've got a couple who've been active with us for more than a decade, and so people come in and they may a lot of them have never had prostate cancer themselves, but they've had a friend, or they've had their dad or somebody, an uncle who's been impacted by it, and this is their way of giving back. And it's not just guys that volunteer at our events. We have women who do also to salute the men in their life. So it's the sort of thing, just like any organization. We need that support to be able to pull off what we pull off.
So before you started this initiative, you obviously must have been some kind of craft beer fan or beer drinker of some sort, right? For that idea to already be there. What's kind of your history of craft beer, and how far does it go back? Your love of it?
It goes back to statute of limitations is probably run out, so it goes back to probably earlier than legal drinking age for me.
We won't tell anybody.
No.
but I've always enjoyed more flavorful beers, and so so I had a little bit of a romance with with craft beer at its very infancy when it was starting out. And I was a journalism school student at Syracuse University, and I took a magazine writing course, and one of the requirements was that you had to write a query letter to a publication and get a rejection notice to get a grade in the class. The professor basically said, you're not going to make a living working in a newspaper. You're going to have to sell freelance stories in addition to it to make a living. So you're going to have to learn how to write these query letters, and you're going to have to develop a tough skin from rejection. So got to do that. So I by chance, my dad and my future father-in-law, one Saturday I was with them, and they were talking about craft breweries in Syracuse, old breweries in Syracuse. Term craft brewery didn't even exist then. And I was fascinated because I did not know they were telling me about different street corners where there was a brewery, that shut down in 1960, shut down in 1962. I found it fascinating. So I wrote my query letter to the local alternative daily, the Syracuse New Times, on brewing history in Syracuse. And lo and behold, I got an acceptance letter, and sold my first freelance article for the grand total of $25, which back then would buy a couple, would buy a little bit of good beer. But the fascinating thing about anything in life, including freelance writing, is once you have experience, and in the case of a writer, once you have a clip on a subject, you then become sort of an expert, right? And so I was able to take that one clip and parlay it into a number of magazine articles on a national level, and do things, and have written about craft beer for, it's over 40 years now.
Oh, wow. Awesome.
Yeah. So you were in on those early days, those micro brews and those kinds of things, right?
Yeah. It, back in the day when you really couldn't, you might be able to find one or two in a city like Boston or New York, or if you went to Nashville, you might not find one in Nashville. You might not find one in Charlotte. And it, there was a small sort of underground group of folks who, if you knew somebody in that city, you could say, hey, I've got this beer. I will send you a 6-pack if you send me a 6-pack of that. and you would, you would ship beer across the country so you get to try something. My job allowed me to travel a bit, so I was able to get to certain cities and get out and try the local beers, and just seeing the explosion that happened in the industry in the 1990s and into the early part of the 2000s was just incredible, and the talent that came in and the creativity, really amazing.
It was, and then coming out of that was the consistency, which is where we are now. Right, a lot of those microbreweries early on, they weren't consistent. They don't exist anymore because the same beer wouldn't be the same the next time you went and got it.
Yeah, it's like anything. A lot of those folks, were self-taught. They were home brewers, and there's still a number of those people in the industry. But the reality is, if nowadays when a home brewer reaches a certain point where they might be making a transition, there's education involved, whether they go to a brewing school formally or they take some training courses. There's that consistency and the quality that goes in. I mean, breweries have sophisticated labs to test beer and make sure there's not bacteria that'll put off flavors in beers and things, unless you're in Belgium, and then you encourage that kind of stuff.
Right, absolutely. The more the merrier.
Yes.
Well, you couldn't have picked a community better. And again, you've got a background in craft beer anyway, but you couldn't have picked a community better to partner with in this thing. I mean, just our experience in craft beer, just drinking it is fantastic. Talking to great people like you. We've had Melanie Pierce on, who does the Breweries fundraising and beer events and things, and it's not the same thing, but it's kind of that version for women, and they have early detection stuff and things at the festivals, and it's just wonderful seeing this community coming together.
And you kind of mentioned that in the beginning, that it took off right away, how kind of re-emphasizing that you were really embraced right away by the beer community and your connections of the number of years that you've been involved in it too.
Yeah, we got early support from a lot of places. I can remember, one call that I got that really blew me away in the very early days of Pints for Prostates. Jack Joyce, the late Jack Joyce, who started Rogue Ales in Oregon, called me one day and just asked me how I was doing, asked me what I was doing with the group. I explained it to him, and a couple days later, I had a very nice check from Rogue Ales that allowed us to. It was when we decided, hey, we can print some T-shirts and things and do some things where we can have some merch to get the word out with too. So that kind of support has been incredible. And when like an event like the Denver Beer Tasting, where you've got people like Side Project from Missouri is coming there with an anniversary beer, 10 Candles, and you've got it's hard. I'm leaving. So many people get left out when I sort of start mentioning people like Weldworks bringing coconut marshmallow scoop is the beer they're bringing. These are
so
beers.
Good.
Yeah, they're beers that when they release the bottles and they make them available, they sell out, and they don't need to. They could sell these beers and they could make a lot of money selling them, yet they donate them to our event and bring them there so that we can take that and take those donations we get from people buying tickets and help people who need to be helped.
Awesome. What are we've talked about that fundraising event, and you do obviously 100 throughout the country. What are some of the other events, whether beer tastings or setting up at a bar or a restaurant, or what are some of the other things that you do that count as towards that 100?
Yeah. So right now coming up, there is the The Macon Beer Fest in Macon, Georgia is going to be coming up in mid-October. That's an event we've been involved with for a number of years. It's run by a great guy, Steve Bell, and the Rotary Club of downtown Macon. It's an outdoor festival in a historic city. It's beautiful. It's fun. That happens in mid-October. We talked about the Flying Saucer a couple of minutes ago.
Mm-hmm.
Flying Saucer right now has, if you've got one of their locations in your town and you go in, you're paying your tab at the end. The next couple of months they're doing a roundup program on tips, so you're able to donate some change to Pints for Prostates. But if you get many people donating change, it adds up across all their locations. So it's things like that happen, and we've got other breweries around that'll do pint nights for us that will do other things as we get out there and meet guys.
There are something that's intrigued me. On your website, it talks about hosting events, and I've asked this a couple of and I didn't see anything about Nashville on there, but if someone wanted to host an event locally in their town, what does something like that entail? Could Steve and I do something? Would we partner with a tap room or a brewery or something that we know or who we know?
Yeah, we always tell people that you need two things for an event. You need a location and you need a date, and that's basically where it starts from. We have several different ways of fundraising. We have done some raffles in the past that have been very successful. We're sort of in between raffles right now as we look out there to what to do. So, but typically, going to have a conversation if you wanted to do an event, if a retailer or a brewer or a beer bar wanted to do an event, we will talk to them, or if you and a couple of your friends want to organize something. Usually going into a retailer, most of them have heard of us by now, because we've been around for a while, and they may have poured at the Denver Beer Tasting. They may have been at the Macon Beer Festival or one of the other ones that we've been involved with. So it's starting off the conversation and just seeing what their interest is, and you can take it from there. And we have signage and other things that people can use for the event to do it. And it's real, as you mentioned up front, we're a real grassroots organization, getting out there and meeting people. And it's the fundraising is important because the fundraising allows us to do some of the other work we do. But the most important thing is just having those conversations with guys and starting those conversations, because that's where the important magic happens, if you will, of people deciding, yeah, I'm going to get screened. And that's what's really critical. And it's kind of funny in these situations, because sometimes we'll see guys sort of walk past us, and either their friends or their girlfriend or their wife will kind of drag them back and say, hey, this guy really needs to hear your message.
Yeah.
That's important. A little positive peer pressure is a good thing.
Look, when you were in Rome, right, in that situation, like, you couldn't have a better opportunity to get screened in a situation like that.
I'm sorry, you broke up there.
So in a situation like that, you wouldn't have a better opportunity as a man to get screened. Hey,
yeah,
come back
that's
here.
Yep, we're bringing it to you, and
yep.
It's a great setting to have the conversation, because people, their guards down a little bit, and we have fun with it. We're not we're not going to stand there and lecture you and say you got to get screened. It's a conversation, and it's a thing where over a beer you can say, hey dude, it's part of being a guy, and
Yeah.
you need to take care of this.
And
Well,
I think when you
no,
go
go
ahead,
Steve.
Scott.
I was gonna say,
Well, I was
in that
gonna
moment,
say,
no, in that moment, this happens sometimes.
It,
But in that moment, somebody could turn around like, look, everybody else is doing it. You know,
yes,
you might as
yeah,
well too.
exactly, and it's one of those things where um, if you could wait a long time for some guys to pick the phone up and schedule their appointment and actually show up to get the blood screening. But if they're at a festival and they're standing in line waiting to get in anyways, if you go over and talk to them and say, hey, roll up your sleeve, and it takes 3 minutes to do this, and your buddy will hold your place in line.
Yeah,
I've pulled many men out of the line, and they've gone over and gotten screened.
it's it's magical. If I may, just maybe one more question about the hosting thing. And if I had a place in mind and I'm thinking about one, what would that place, if they said, okay, what do I have to do? What would that place have to do? And I'm thinking about whether it's a brewery or a tap room or something to host an event. So, again, so that, hey, what have I got to do? Would you like to do this? Is it really just having the place?
Yeah, we try to make it work for the brewery, okay, or for the beer bar. We've done. I mean, the range is really up to the creativity of the location and what they want to do. We've done everything from people saying, "Hey, um, all the sales of this beer on this day are going to be donated to Pints for Prostates, or $1 a pint on that night is going to go to Pints for Prostates, or we're going to have a cornhole tournament on Saturday, and all the entry fees are going to be donated to Pints for Prostates." The range is incredible on the number of things people have done for us over the years, to try to get attention. And so, if it works for them, and we have a chance to raise some awareness during the event, then we're in.
Outstanding. Sorry, Steve, I think I cut you off earlier.
yeah, you're fine.
So okay, here's another. So for someone listening, what are some other ways they can be a part of this? What can we all do out there to help?
Well, first thing you could do is if you've got a 40-year-old or older male in your life, first thing to do is to just ask them if they've been screened and if they know their PSA number. That's the biggest thing that you could do for Pints for Prostates, to just start that conversation. And if they don't seem to know, you can point them to pintsforprostates.org. And as you guys have found, we've got some information on there that has some numbers, has some information in a way that should get guys engaged. But beyond that, we do have a donate section on our page. We also have some merch that we're selling on our page, and I would encourage anybody who has thought about it, and has considered making a trip to Colorado for the Great American Beer Festival and hasn't done it yet. They really should. That's a bucket list trip. That's it's going to be, it's a little bit less than a month away now, and you can have a fabulous time. Come out to GABF, and make it to the Denver Rare Beer Tasting on that Thursday. The breweries in Denver and in the rest of Colorado that week are all doing special events and special releases. So you can have that beer bucket list trip. As much as, I mean, I've been to Oktoberfest, I've been to London and Prague and Munich and Bamberg and Cologne and Brussels and a dozen other great European beer capitals. But the reality is Denver during GABF weekend and the Denver Rare Beer Tasting is a special place. And so you don't have to get your passport out. You can just come to Denver and do that.
It's pretty great. Like we'll do the GABF, and then we spend a couple days, whether we go to Colorado Springs or Fort Collins or something, and just slay the breweries, just drink all their beer. It's fantastic.
Yeah, there's a lot of great spots out there, and the beer culture that's there, and the people that are around it, um, friendly folks in those breweries, and just the range of beer that you can have on a trip like that is pretty incredible.
It is. It is. So let me ask you one more question, and I think you touched on this earlier, and it's a vague question. And what makes you most proud at the end of the day, it, when when the event's over with or your work day's done? What makes you most proud of this organization?
Um, it's interesting when I was diagnosed and had my surgery. It was 51 weeks later when my first grandchild was born. Had a granddaughter, and and I hadn't really been back in a hospital since my surgery. And I remember, saying to my wife that there's a good reason to be in a hospital. We've got a grandbaby now, and so I've been fortunate enough to to have I've got three grandchildren now, and I wouldn't have seen probably wouldn't have seen them all if I hadn't been detected and treated the prostate cancer. So when you're asking me what makes me the most proud about Pints for Prostates, it's knowing that there's some other guys walking around out there that have had the same experience, and knowing that we've got a lot of committed friends who help us, breweries that don't that really don't need to do what they do for us, and they do. Some of the beer bars and some of the festivals and people that do it for the right reason, and they're there trying to help people, and they're there trying to we all have had, um, because of this disease, 1 in 8 men in America are going to face this. We all know somebody. These are our fathers, our brothers. They're our sons in some cases. They're our neighbors or our coworkers. So that kind of situation, it frankly, it feels good to be helping all those people.
Well, I can say that we're proud to have you on. I mean, this has
Yep.
been amazing. Steve alluded to this kind of early in the podcast. A little bit of a wrinkle in what we do, but it still ties in to what we do. So it fit perfectly.
Well, I really appreciate it because there's going to be somebody listening to the show who needs to hear the message, and it might be some buddies who need to hear the message. And this isn't a disease to be afraid of. It's a disease to take control of, and take charge of your health, and get in charge of your numbers, and as we like to say, uh, get tested, live longer, and drink more beer.
I love that. I wrote that down. I swear I did. I wrote that down because that is so good. That is so good. Rick, is there anything that you would like to talk about that we have not covered? Any word you want to get out there? Anything we didn't touch on?
No, just stressing that September is Prostate Cancer Awareness Month, but we've got, uh, every day, you should be, people need to be aware of prostate cancer, and need to be aware of the fact that you need to take care of your own health. You need to take responsibility, and you need to take some steps to get screened. That's the most important thing. That's the most important thing we try to get across. And thankfully, there is a month, and that allows us to do interviews like this,
Yep.
and spread the word out there. We use Facebook and Instagram to get those messages out,
Mhm.
and it's great, the connections we've made through social media as well. So
And can
um,
you talk about where people can find you on the social media platforms?
yeah, it's simple. It's on Facebook or Instagram. It's at Pints, the numeral 4 Prostates. And you'll find us. And right now we're promoting the Denver Rare Beer Tasting and encouraging people to take a look at that event, but also reminding them of the fact that it is National Prostate Cancer Awareness Month, and important to to be out there and encouraging your friends. This is a situation where getting it top of mind, raising awareness with them. It's a step process, because you may need to schedule that test if you're not coming to one of our events. But if you come to one of our events, roll up your sleeve and get screened.
There you go. Hey, Rick, thank you for bringing all your information today and your passion to this cause. We appreciate it very much.
Man, we can't thank you enough. You've done us a favor.
No, Steve and Scott, this is great. Thanks. Hey, maybe we'll do this again next year.
You come on here anytime you want. You have an open invitation.
All right, thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
And even to talk beer, we could do that too. So great. Thank you very much. All right.
Cool.
Hey, that is Rick Lyke. He is the founder of Pints for Prostates. You can go on their website at pintsforprostates.org. Look for them there. Go get checked out. Go check those numbers out as well. We appreciate it. And I'm Steve Sullivan, along with Scott Touron, and this has been the Brewery Underground Podcast.
I'm inspired. I'm motivated. Prost.
Prost.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Awesome.
I appreciate it.
Well done, Rick.